The thing about stress that is not resolved, stress that stays within you, stress that is not adequately regulated and managed. The thing about a stress that stays within you is that it starts to communicate with your thought process. Your thought process then further exacerbates stress, and that exaggeration of stress further leads to a changed way of perception. In the most simplest of ways, stress that stays in the brain and in the body is not stress that automatically necessarily goes away by itself. And a large portion of people live with stress stored inside their bodies and their brains without knowing what to do about the stress, and they hope that as they carry on with life, their stress is going to go away. Now, the real problem is that the nature of stress people usually have is much deeper in the context of concern and worry. So when they're worried, their stress is reinforced. And when their stress is reinforced, the neural circuits start to deepen even more because the neurons that fire together, they start wiring together. So yes, stress would end if you totally biologically change and you develop. But if you keep on doing the same thing over and over again, you're changing the way your nervous system functions. And it's not just very, very dangerous when stress lives inside the body. The real danger is that the hormonal structure starts to change as well based on poor regulation of stress. Why does it happen? Because you know that stress leads to pain. You know that stress generates displeasure. It generates tension, it generates pain, and all of that is something the body does not want. So, when people are constantly living with stress, they eventually make this blunder. They start to avoid anything by and large that's stressful. And that's one of the worst things a person can do. And that's one of the main reasons why so many people stay stuck on the same levels, because they are avoiding, by and large, the matters that generate and contain stress. And stress is a major part of life. It's important to understand that, okay? It's not some small sideline topic. Stress is something that you will have to go through. Stress is something that will show up in your life, and stress is one of the matters that you have to learn how to adequately and properly deal with. Because if you do not learn to deal with stress is going to be the boss that will determine what you should or shouldn't do, where you should or shouldn't go, what you should or shouldn't choose. And that's a terrible way to live. Why? Because stress is shaping your pleasure and your pain instead of you shaping that. So let's just say there's a difficult conversation that you are meant to have with your spouse and you're avoiding it because of stress. Or there's a business decision you have to make, or you have to fire somebody that is spreading bad energy on the team, or there's a difficult decision you have to make regarding cash flow, whatever the matter is. If you're not good with stress that resides within the dimension of choosing, you will not be good with choosing either in many ways. So the only way to manage stress properly is to first of all accept that stress is something that you have to confront. Stress is something that you have to learn to manage, and the way to manage it contains three aspects. The first one is knowledge, the second one is firmness, and the third one is often neglected by many people. It's courage, really. Difficult conversations are important conversations. Difficult conversations often are the final endpoints of a singular milestone before the next milestone starts. So in order for you to learn to manage stress properly, you have to ask yourself, what exactly are you stressing about? Now, this might sound like a very simple question, but the psychology behind it is often related to the psychology of pain. What does that mean? It means that many people are so used to living with low intensity stress that they have forgotten how to live properly and peacefully without complete absence of stress. Why? Because they're getting stressed every few minutes. They're getting bothered and anxious and distracted every few minutes. So the whole depth of peace misses them because they have long forgotten how to live in a peaceful, serene, harmonious way of living in which you actually experience deep happiness and lasting joys. Now, one of the worst things stress can do for you is that it sensitizes you more towards displeasure and pain, and it desensitizes you towards pleasure and happiness. This is not true for all forms of stress, but this is true for the stress that people usually deepen over and over again until it becomes the central deciding factor of their lives. And then the question they have to ask themselves, which again is a misguiding question, will this stress me or not? Sometimes things will stress you and you will have to still go on and make the right decisions. Now, to avoid foolish stress, unnecessary stress, a stress that is totally irrelevant, that's a different matter and we're not discussing that. But all stress is not bad stress. Some pressure, some tension is good for you because it helps you develop, it helps you grow, it helps you regulate and propel yourself into the next stages of your life, and they help you really think critically and make the right decisions for yourself. So if you want to effectively manage stress, you have to first of all allocate it in a single grid. Because if it's dispersed throughout your life, if you're stressed every now and then throughout the day, this is something that is not right. If there's something that is causing a problem in your life, do not half deal with it. Do not come to it and go away from it and then come to it again and half solve it and then let it explode in its tension throughout the day. Do not go on living life like this because it will really suck away a lot of happiness and quality of your life. And eventually, you not managing properly your stress is also going to suck away a lot of quality from many of your thoughts, which then further is going to weaken the perception and sensitization towards happiness. In the most simplest of words, if you want to live in a good way, if you want to be psychologically healthy, emotionally intelligent, physically strong, and peaceful in your heart, then you have to learn to develop the muscle mass to deal with stress instead of running away from stress while not accepting the fact that you do not have enough muscle mass to deal with stress. What does that mean? It means that you have to learn to train and strengthen to deal with difficult situations of life. You have to train with knowledge. You have to train with introspection. You have to train with courage. You have to train with focus. You have to train with discipline. And when people constantly choose to live with this low intensity, dispersed stress that is not isolated in a singular grid, but it's spread throughout their day, what really happens when people keep on living with this nature of stress? They eventually start to corrupt their ability to focus and concentrate. Because they're so stressed out, their creative energy is already in danger. And now the body's job becomes to preserve your remainder peace. And as a result, it avoids much of tension. And anything that requires the courage or the extra psychological effort, the body starts to develop this relationship, which is very, very harmful, in which the body just avoids anything that is difficult because the body wants you to keep away from stress. And that's one of the reasons why many people have short attention spans. And short attention span that a person does not take care of often forms the foundation of divorce, of doom, of psychological illnesses, of mental problems, of disorders, and a lot of suffering in human life. So you have to sincerely learn to manage stress and do not just joke around about it and avoid this conversation and just run away from yourself. If something is stressing you, isolate it in one part of the day. For example, you're working, okay? Morning till evening, you're working. You don't want to think about something that is going to obviously generate stress in a timeline in which you're already occupied with your duties and responsibilities. Instead, what you should do is to isolate the matter in a time in which you will be fresh, energetic, available, and free to deal with the problem. And you make a decision that you're not going to psychologically have stress spread throughout your day in a dull intensity fashion. Instead, what you will do is that you will deal with your stress, for example, between 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. This is the time you're going to have that difficult conversation, and you will fully, with complete engagement, deal with the matter in this timeline. And before it, you're not going to be tensed, worried, psychologically distracted, and causing distress for yourself again and again. It's important to understand that if you do not discipline your brain, instead of you becoming the master of it, you're going to become a peasant of your hormones and your nervous system. The chemicals are meant to be controlled. The hormones are meant to be regulated. The thoughts are meant to be properly disciplined, and your emotions are meant to be observed, so you know what emotion is actually beneficial and what emotions of yours are actually toxic. All of this is important to understand if you're willing to live a serene and peaceful life. Now, many of the people, the real reason why they stay so stressed is not because of the stress itself. It's because they want to avoid the whole subject that generates stress, which itself produces more stress. What does that mean? If there's something that you obviously have to take care of and you're avoiding that matter because that will generate stress, the avoidance itself is going to further generate even more stress. Do you understand what this means? The avoidance of a stressful matter can lead to even more stress. So there's no avoiding stress. The only way we can deal with stress is by learning to, first of all, validate that stress is a part of life. We cannot avoid it, but we can avoid unnecessary stress. We can avoid irrational stress. We can avoid stress that is based on impulsive nonsense. But some of the stress is useful. In fact, it helps you grow as well, like I said earlier. So your job is to discipline your brain to make the right decisions and not run away from things that are important for you. Because if you run away from that which helps you level up, you're going to also run away from the rewards that only are unlocked when you cover the mileage necessary to be covered. What does that mean? It means that there's a journey you have to take with courage, knowledge, and focus. And if you do not take that journey, you will stay stuck and you will postpone what is meant to be for you. And you're going to stay stuck with pleasures that after certain limits will become your cages. You're not going to enjoy what you're doing, even though it's your leisure time, because you know you're stuck, because you know you lack courage, because you know you are avoiding a stressful but necessary matter that will help you propel in your development and help you better yourself. So the job you have here is to accept the reality and not run away from problem solving. Problem solving is one of the most important of all matters you will ever deal with. If you avoid solving problems, you will avoid solutions. And if you avoid solutions, a lot of problems in their nature, the way they are, they breed even more problems if they're not properly solved. If you stay, for example, obese and you do nothing about it, it will create a lot of other problems as well. If you do not pay your rent on time, it will create other problems as well. If you do not factor in the responsibility you have to pay your taxes and you're not careful regarding the matters of IRS and making sure that you are having your business accurately sorted in its tax structure, you will be in trouble. Problem solving will help you level up. It will help you generate more peace, more psychological muscle to develop with better problems, which will lead to a better life. In the most simplest words, stress is something that you should not avoid unless it's foolish stress. Unless it's a thought that comes to you from shaitan that just wants to waste your time. When I say that stress is something that you have to deal with, I'm talking about stress that is on the path of your purpose and on your journey. I'm not talking about whispers of shaitan. Do not concern yourself with thoughts that are based upon nonsense, that are the whispers of shaitan, and that are just passing thoughts that do not serve any purpose. When you learn to manage your stress, when you discipline your mind and you stay focused on solving and managing things and propelling yourself forward in the right way, you will have the right psychological resources available so you can mature in the right way while retaining your peace.